Good morning and thank you for joining us. Myself, Sarah Lewins and Tracy Parvier have been working on the action research question, how do trial teachers develop knowledge and practice of a mastery approach?
So why did we decide on this topic? Well, the mastery approach was born after it was discovered in Singapore their math skills were very, very poor. In fact, in 2008, it was commented by Ofsted that the England schools that were teaching maths became very concerned of the results that were coming out of schools. In 2009 and 12, it was also noted international results in Singapore systems, their children were outperforming the international peers by very healthy levels. So in 2013, the government in the UK decided to start investigating. And what they did was they visited the country and they found that these children were actually 3 levels above those children in England. Following on from those meetings, in 2014, our Department for Education funded a trip for an exchange. And this was between our schools and the schools in Shanghai. The whole idea of this exchange was for them to look at these methods of mastery and what was actually going on in this country. Also around about this time, the maths hubs were formed. And across England, there were 35 maths hubs in total. Also in 2016, our government announced their plans to inject further £41 million in our mathematics education. It was then starting to come out in the media and professionals about this mastery approach. There was a lot of information on systems and a lot was being published. This was when likes of myself started to take notice and think, what's actually happening? In 2019, last year, the Centre for Excellence opportunity came up that we could start looking at mastery methods. It all made sense because this was happening in primary and also starting to come into secondary, what was actually happening with further education. Since all this started to come into force in 2014, you can now see that there are 530 mastery schools. And as you can see from these stats, 5,800 teachers have been developed, which has then had an impact to over 170,000 students. So this is now bringing us to date. What have we actually done about it since getting involved in 2019?
In the initial stages, we were slightly overwhelmed with the amount of literature relating to mastery, because we soon realised that most of it was more applicable to a primary or secondary setting. One of the first books we read was Helen Drury's How to Teach Mathematics for Mastery, which proved to be a very useful starting point. Then came more academic reading such as Sternberg. Whilst the academic reading allowed us to gain some insight into the theory behind the mastery approach, it wasn't particularly useful at helping us develop our skills and application of the methods used. It wasn't until we met Alan Davies at a Teach Meet in July 2019 that we set ourselves on the right path with our research in terms of using and adapting the White Rose scheme of learning to aid our understanding of the mastery pedagogies. More hands-on CPD has been the most useful piece of information research that we've carried out. For example, we attended an open classroom hosted by our local maths hub. We've engaged in online CPD sessions with White Rose, and we even hosted a training event at Gateshead College with Norma Honey. YouTube has been particularly helpful as we have watched numerous videos to aid our online our teaching within line with mastery methods.
So what did we find out? We know that maths activities and classroom pedagogy are very important for students' learning. To support this, we must also support our teachers while they are in their roles as maths teachers in the classroom. Traditionally, it was thought that gaining a teaching qualification was good enough to be a good teacher. But through our research that we've been doing over the last couple of months, it is clear that continued training is a major element in these mastery countries. During this project, I have noticed that many researchers have agreed that Asian countries have developed an excellent training scheme for teachers than anywhere else in the world. Let's have a look at what they've found and said. After starting their careers in school, all in-service teachers in Singapore have access to comprehensive and systematic in-service training and professional development activities at different levels. This CPD has been designed to their needs, and it is very, very personal. It's also very important to note at this point that the CPD is in particular for long service teachers, not just for those new in the profession. So since 2006, in these countries, all school teachers can apply for professional development need of 10 weeks. Also, every teacher is entitled to 100 hours of in-service training each year. Some schools actually reserve 1 hour fixed time every single week, and this includes topics such as research, using ICT, and different forms of assessment.
As the topic is so wide-ranging, and through our initial research we found this out, we needed to focus our research. So under the guidance of Mark North, we identified 5 key principles, those being the learning sequence, the direct teaching input, the differentiation through method. All students were working together in a deeper understanding. Those are the 5 key principles that we identified that were important in mastery teaching in FE. We use these 5 principles to evaluate everything else against. We could then focus our data collection, our collection methods, and hopefully the outcomes. So we used 3 main methods of collecting data, those being personal reflections, lesson observations, and a student survey. Our personal reflections were very important. We used these to develop our practice and to work collaboratively as a team. They also enabled us to reflect on things that had gone well in the classroom and things that we needed to develop further. The lesson observations took 2 main forms. The first were quality observations carried out by a senior member of the college staff. And the second were more informal observations, which were based around an observation schedule, which we developed and adapted throughout the process. The third method was the student survey. Now, the students had positive feedback, things like they said it kept them busy and the lessons were really hands-on. And one of the main things that came out of the lesson observations in terms of the students was that at no point during the lessons were students off topic. They were 58% of the time involved in activities which kept them doing things other than just writing all the time. The teachers were also given plenty to do in the sessions, ranging from things like questioning, discussion-based activities, and what we classed as teaching or instructing.
So go back to our initial question, how do we develop our knowledge and practice of the mastery approach. We've discussed and shown you how our background is been a lot in research and how we've gathered our information. But what we would like to share with you now is a short video on our students inputting everything that we've been talking about today in practice. So in our conclusion, we realised at the start that we didn't actually know enough about the mastery approach ourselves. And this is why we used the approach of developing our own understanding before we could actually roll it out to anybody else. And as you can see by these bullet points, mastery has become the word that sums up good maths teaching. But as it says, it is really important that we develop ourselves as well as developing teachers, especially when teachers have got to make those professional judgments before they can adopt and adapt these ideas for it to work well with themselves, their school and their students.
As part of our recommendations as a result of this action research, we identified 4 key areas. The first being our own CPD and our own knowledge and application of mastery pedagogies needs to continue. We need to develop ourselves even further, as we do not profess to be experts. Even after a few months of doing this, it's going to take a few years for us to be able to really understand the approach properly. The second thing that we would like to do, and this is going to be an ongoing recommendation, is that we would like to develop our colleagues within the organisation. We would like to encourage them to become involved with the project and hopefully develop and upskill themselves and be able to use the mastery pedagogies and approaches effectively within the classroom. Thirdly, we would like to then roll that CPD out to external partners who are also involved in the Centre for Excellence for Maths and widen the scope of our CPD delivery. And lastly, but possibly the most important part of this, would be to develop a whole college approach for maths delivery. This would require the input from senior management as well as the whole maths team. We would be looking at developing teachers across the whole of the maths department, those who deliver GCSEs and functional skills qualifications, so that we have a more coherent approach to curriculum design, lesson planning and pedagogies.